The key to taking ideas that are inspirations and turning them into actual games is to go through the core design loop. And so you take those ideas whenever you get them, you write them down, then you figure out what the frame, what the parameters are about how you're going to make that game. So maybe you know you want to make a card game and you want to have it ready in a couple of months, or you want to, whatever the specifics are. You brainstorm, and the process of brainstorming starts with trying to create as many ideas as you can, and it ends with trying to prototype as few things as possible. And this is really where a lot of the rubber meets the road, right? You want to be able to prototype and make a test of the idea, because everybody has tons of great ideas all the time. Everybody also has tons of terrible ideas all the time. The only way to know the difference is to prototype it and test it. And so you get your game in front of people, ideally multiple groups, you get feedback, and then you take that feedback and you circle back up to the beginning and you incorporate that into your next iteration. And that process of going through the core design loop is how you turn inspiration into reality. Well, when I say prototype less, what I mean is that you want to do as little work as possible every time you prototype. So you will prototype many times, but because you're doing that so often, the less work you do on every prototype, the more times you're going to be able to prototype. And so the instinct that people have is they see a great game on the shelf and they say, okay, well, I want to make my game look like that. I want it to have cool art, I want it to have all the components, I want everything to be really nice. That takes an incredibly long time. And when you're testing, your goal is to make lots of changes based on the feedback you get. So if you're going to take hours, days, weeks, months to make a prototype, you figure out you want to change it, it takes hours, days, weeks, months to make it again, the progress in your game is going to move very slow. But if instead you just write on Sharpie on the back of some cards and try out some ideas real quick, and then you just re-Sharpie those cards and go again 5 minutes later, you're going to get 10 times or 100 times as many iterations as the person who's trying to make things pretty. So that's why I always advise people to really keep it simple and really be as lazy as possible when it comes to making your prototype, so that you can make as many as you can and get as many tests in as you can. The piece of advice I would give to someone that's designing their very first game is to really try to keep the scope small. You want to be able to, a lot of people have ideas of they want to make a game that's like a combination of Halo and World of Warcraft, right? And that takes millions of dollars and a team of people and tons of work to do. Or even a giant scaling board game that takes 3 hours to play, right? Those things can have a ton of components, have a ton of work. When you're first making a game, really try to take something simple so that you can get practice with the ideas, right? You could maybe, what's one element of that giant board game that maybe you could focus on and build a game around? And also being able to have something that you're excited about, something that you're passionate about, but that you can ideally make simpler. So what I mean by that is, maybe you want to take a favorite game you have, and instead of just adding more stuff to it, what could you remove to make it better, right? The tendency of a new designer is always to try to do too much. So my advice would be really try to focus in on something narrow and then use that to hone your skills and then build up to more complicated games down the road. Sure, yeah, this is taking the World of Warcraft brand and IP and turning it into a miniatures game was a very difficult and interesting challenge. And so what I think about when I try to take one, especially a game IP, right? Because World of Warcraft was a game, was an online role-playing game, and turning it into another medium is think, what is at the essence of it? What's the core of what makes World of Warcraft exciting? And then what does this new medium bring to the table, right? So I'm not going to be able to have the same level of detail and tracking and abilities and level up and experience that you can in a digital game, because that tracking is really, really annoying in the physical space. But what I can have is this tactile, interesting experience of cool characters and miniatures moving around a board, and that relation between them, and having this sort of bird's eye view of being able to control multiple characters and have them interact in this very physical, very tactile way. And so I thought, okay, how do I take that core experience of what the different classes are and the coolnesses and immersiveness of that world, and then express the upsides of the new medium. So it's really that combination of understanding the core emotions and the core of the thing you're trying to work with, and then the advantages and disadvantages of the medium that you're expressing it in.